What if I told you the flatness you're feeling isn't depression? What if the numbness, the complete lack of interest in everything that used to light you up, what if that's not you breaking down? What if that's the most important thing that's ever happened to you? I know how that sounds. You've been Googling symptoms. You've been wondering if you need help. You've been scared that maybe this is just who you are now. Someone who feels nothing. Someone who can't get excited about anything. Someone who's watching their own life like it's happening to someone else. But here's what nobody's telling you. The numbness isn't depression. It's the shift beginning. And if you can understand what's actually happening right now, if you can stop fighting it and start trusting it, everything changes. You know what's happening to you? You're between frequencies. Think about the last time you were in a car scanning through radio stations. You turn the dial, and for a moment, between one station and the next, there's nothing but static. No music, no words, just noise. And if you didn't know how radios worked, if you'd never tuned one before, you might think it's broken. You might think something's wrong, but it's not broken. It's just between stations. The old frequency faded out. The new one hasn't locked in yet. And that static, that noise, that emptiness you're hearing, that's not the end of the signal. That's the space between what was and what's coming. You're not losing reception. You're tuning to a different frequency. And everything you're feeling right now, that flatness, that numbness, that sense that nothing matters anymore, that's the static. You're between frequencies, and you're terrified because you've been in the static longer than you expected. Let me tell you what's really happening. For years, maybe your entire life, you've been tuned to a frequency that wasn't yours. You've been listening to someone else's station, playing someone else's music, living someone else's dreams, and you didn't even know it because it sounded good enough, because everyone around you was listening to the same station, because you convinced yourself that if everyone else thought this frequency was worth tuning into, then it must be right. So you stayed there. You forced yourself to enjoy the songs. You pretended the static you were already hearing was just part of the experience. You told yourself, this is what life sounds like. But your soul knew. Your authentic self knew. And eventually, it did the only thing it could do to save you. It started turning the dial without your permission, without your conscious awareness. It started tuning you away from that borrowed frequency and toward the one that's actually yours. And that's where you are right now, in the static between stations. And it feels like nothing, like emptiness, like you've lost yourself. But you haven't lost yourself. You've lost the false version. The one that was never really you to begin with, the one tuned to everyone else's expectations, everyone else's dreams, everyone else's definition of success, happiness, and worth. That version is fading. The signal is dying, and you're in the space between who you were pretending to be and who you actually are. And that space, it doesn't feel like transformation. It feels like death, but it's not. It's the most alive you've ever been. You're just between frequencies. And the new one, the real one, your frequency, it's coming. You just can't hear it yet because you're still in the static. Here's what you need to understand. You can't go back to the old frequency. Even if you wanted to, even if you tried, your soul has already turned the dial. You can try to force yourself to care about the things you used to care about. You can try to reignite passion for the goals you used to chase. You can try to feel excited about the life you've been living, but it won't work. Because you're not tuned to that station anymore. The signal is gone, and trying to force yourself back to it is like trying to hear music from a station that's no longer in range. All you'll get is more static, more emptiness, more proof that something's wrong with you. But nothing's wrong with you. You're just between frequencies. And the only way forward is to stop trying to go back. Stop trying to force interest where there isn't any. Stop trying to resurrect a version of yourself that was never meant to last. Let the static be static. Let the emptiness be empty. Because it's not permanent. It's transitional. And every moment you sit in it, without panicking, without running, without trying to fill it with the wrong noise, you're getting closer to the new frequency, the real one, yours. But here's where most people destroy themselves. They interpret the static as failure, as proof they're broken, as evidence they need to fix something. So they start searching, they start consuming, they start grabbing onto anything that gives them a hit of feeling, any frequency, even if it's someone else's, even if it makes them feel worse, because at least it's something, at least it's not the static. And every time they do that, they delay the real shift. They interrupt the process. They stay in the static longer, because finding your frequency isn't about searching. It's about stillness. It's about sitting in the silence until the right signal comes through. It's about trusting the dial is still turning, even when you can't hear anything yet. It's about knowing the static isn't the destination. It's the passage. So let me ask you something. What are you trying to force right now? What old frequency are you trying to tune back into because the static is too uncomfortable? What person are you pretending to still be because admitting you've outgrown them feels too scary? What goals are you still chasing, even though they don't excite you anymore, because letting them go feels like giving up? Because I promise you, every ounce of energy you spend trying to go back to the old frequency is energy you're not spending tuning into the new one. Every moment you spend forcing interest in things that no longer resonate is a moment you're staying in the static instead of moving through it. You're not broken. You're not depressed. You're not failing. You're between frequencies. And the fastest way through the static is to stop fighting it and start trusting it. Here's what's actually happening on a deeper level. Your nervous system has been running on high alert for years, trying to be the person everyone needed you to be, trying to care about the things you were supposed to care about, trying to make a borrowed frequency sound like music, and your system is exhausted, so it's shut down. Not because something's wrong, but because it's recalibrating, resetting, clearing out the signals that never belonged to you, so the real one can finally come through without interference. During that reset, you're supposed to feel nothing. You're supposed to be still, quiet, empty, because your system is protecting you from grabbing another wrong frequency just because the static feels uncomfortable. Now, if this is landing, if you're recognizing the truth, I need you to do one thing. Go to the comments and type 5 words. I'm between stations right now. That's 5 words it. No explanation, just the declaration. Because when you name where you are, something shifts. You stop seeing the static as failure and start seeing it as passage. And if you know someone feeling numb, disconnected, uninterested in life, share this with them. Give them permission to declare it too. I'm between stations right now. Because sometimes we need permission to stop fighting the static and trust the new frequency is coming. If this resonated, subscribe so we can keep walking this path together. And if super thanks feels right, every bit helps me create content that actually matters, instead of filling silence with borrowed noise. But real talk, you being here, listening, present, I never take that for granted. Thank you. The truth is this: you are closer to your real life than you have ever been. Even if it doesn't feel like it, even if it feels like the opposite, even if it feels like you've somehow drifted into a void where nothing moves you anymore, you are closer to your real self, closer to the frequency that actually belongs to you, not the borrowed one, not the improvised one, not the one you learn to tolerate, but the one that is rooted in your bones, your intuition, your deepest knowing, the one that feels like home, the one that carries your name in its sound waves. It just hasn't fully tuned in yet, and I understand how painfully slow this part feels. I know you're exhausted from feeling nothing, from waking up and realizing the things that once sparked a fire in you now barely generate a flicker. I know you're tired of watching your own life like a spectator at a show you never bought tickets for. I know you missed the version of alive you used to feel. That rush, that excitement, that passion, that emotional color that made ordinary moments feel electric. But here's the twist your mind hasn't caught up to yet. The alive you're grieving wasn't actually your alive. It was borrowed alive, temporary alive, a borrowed signal that gave you a hit of emotion but never a sense of belonging. It felt intense but not true, loud but not aligned, bright but not illuminating the path that was meant for you. For so long you lived on frequencies that weren't yours. You tuned yourself to people's expectations, to societal applause, to dreams that sounded admirable when spoken aloud, but felt foreign when whispered inside your heart. You absorbed identities the way a sponge absorbs water, fully, quickly, unconsciously, until you couldn't tell which parts were you and which parts were reflections of everyone around you. You forced interest into things that didn't resonate, like someone trying to dance to a beat they can't actually hear, just because the room told them there was music playing. You convinced yourself that fitting in was the same as being aligned, that intensity was the same as authenticity, that motion was the same as progress. And for a while, it worked. Not because it was right, but because it was familiar. And familiarity is a powerful anesthetic. It numbs the awareness that something deeper is off-key. But now the dial has turned. The signal has dropped. The borrowed station has finally gone out of range. And that's why you feel this blankness, this static, this emotional suspension. Because your system is no longer feeding on what used to stimulate it. It's no longer reacting to the old cues. The old frequency has faded, like a song ending midair, unresolved, unfinished, not because something went wrong, but because the playlist was never meant to loop forever. The emotional numbness you're experiencing isn't a breakdown. It's a dismantling, a shedding, a clearing, a cosmic recalibration that feels like silence, because it is making room for a sound you've never heard before. What's coming now? That's real alive. Not the loud kind that fades, but the deep kind that stays. Not the spark that burns out, but the current that runs continuously beneath the surface. Your signal, your station, your music, your unfiltered rhythm, the one that doesn't need an audience to feel valid, the one that doesn't need external permission to exist, the one that will make you feel again, not in bursts, but in resonance. And once that frequency locks in, everything will look different. You won't recognize your old life, not because it was bad, but because it was never yours. You'll look back and feel a strange disbelief that you ever stayed tuned to a station that didn't speak your language, that didn't play your song, that didn't carry your truth. You'll wonder how you ever confused emotional highs for soul alignment, how you ever believed borrowed passion was the same as inner purpose, how you ever thought exhaustion was the price of growth, instead of a sign you were trying to grow in soil that wasn't fertile for you. So again, hear this clearly, and let it sink past your thoughts and into your awareness. Stop searching. Stop forcing. Stop panicking. Stop treating this transition like an error message. Sit in the silence instead of sprinting away from it. Trust the dial is still turning even when you can't hear the signal yet. Trust that the numbness is your cocoon, not your conclusion. Trust that the static is not your identity, but your corridor. The space between what you've outgrown and what you haven't yet embodied. The pause between chapters. The breath between endings and beginnings. The moment before recognition hits like a bell inside your chest. Can you hear it yet? Maybe not fully. Maybe it still sounds distant, faint, like footsteps down a long hallway. But it's closer than you think. It's not approaching from the outside. It's rising from the inside. And that makes all the difference. Because what comes from inside doesn't ask for validation. It simply arrives. Undeniable. You don't tune into it by force. You tune into it by stillness. You don't hear it by demanding it. You hear it by listening without resistance. You don't lock into it by chasing it. You lock into it by letting go of every frequency that tries to interrupt its arrival. Trust it. Let it unfold. The static ends not when you overpower it, but when you stop seeing it as an enemy. The frequency locks in not when you demand certainty, but when you allow uncertainty to finish its work. The music arrives not when you claw at the silence, but when you honor it as sacred construction space. Because what you think is emptiness is actually preparation. What you think is the absence of feeling is the absence of interference. What you think is stagnation is actually alignment happening invisibly beneath your awareness. Like a system update you didn't schedule, but desperately needed. You are not broken. You are not lost. You are not fading. You are not depressed. You are transforming. You are between stations. And the new one, yours, it is coming through. The signal is strengthening. The dial is turning. The noise is clearing. The The runway is being built. The moment is being prepared. And when you finally hear the music that belongs to you, not loud, not borrowed, not temporary, but true, rooted, yours, you will smile at the irony, because you'll understand then, with a quiet awe that shakes nothing but changes everything. The numbness wasn't the burial, it was the birthplace, and the music that is coming, it was always yours to begin with. You were just finally becoming still enough to hear it. The shift starts in silence. The frequency locks in through trust. The static ends through surrender. The music begins through acceptance. And your real life begins the moment you realize you were never meant to go back. You were only ever meant to arrive. So take a breath. Unclench your fists from the old signal. Sit back into the unfolding. The music is not a promise anymore. It is a certainty you haven't yet heard, but you will. And when you do, that will be the moment you realize this wasn't the end of you. This was the return of you.